breakfast to me is a little like music. Some days you want it soft and comforting, like these creamy huevos a la mexicana, scrambled eggs with little sauteed onion and tomato, touch of green chili, little cilantro over the top. But some days, you just want to turn up the volume. Good morning, Yucatan. I am in hot sauce heaven, or should I say inferno. You see, the Yucatan Peninsula is basically a flat slab of limestone. Think about it as a sheet cake covered with a thin layer of topsoil for frosting. It's a pretty hard sell for most crops. But as it turns out, this rocky, limey soil, plus the constant heat and humidity of the Yucatan, proved to be a pretty amazing incubator for, well, what the Yucatecans will tell you is the best habanero in the world. Now, the habanero, sure, it's among the hottest chilies known to man, but what it really gives you is this quick, intense hit of heat. Think about it sort of like wasabi, not like the low, slow burn. But it brings a whole lot more to the party as well. More than heat. It brings flowery, tropical, fruity flavors. With that 1-2 punch of chili heat and flavor, well, you can imagine that habaneros are perfect for a condiment. And here at El Yucateco, one of the gold standard hot sauces in the Yucatan, at any given moment, they're poised to make 5 million little bottles of that stuff just to supply the demand. Yeah, in these barrels, there's nothing but pure puree of fresh habanero chilies. Talk about feeling like you're walking through a nuclear power plant. Well, they take this puree of habanero and they boil it up with spices and salt and some vinegar, and presto, they've got the very essence of Yucatecan flavor. With so few ingredients, it's pretty easy to imagine how you could just do that at home. So if a little habanero goes a long way, what do you do when you get a bumper crop? Well, one of the things that you could do is to freeze them. We do that all the time. I put them out onto a baking sheet. I'll line it with some parchment paper or one of these silicone mats, slide them into the freezer, and when they're hard, then put them into a freezer bag and store them. You can take them out 1 or 2 at a time to season your salsa or whatever preparation that you want to have that special habanero flavor. Or you could make preserved hot sauce, like a vinegary hot sauce, which is what I'm going to show you how to do right now. We've got a dozen of those habaneros that we're going to put into a saucepan along with some chopped onion. We're going to add some carrot. That's going to add color, sweetness, and it'll tone down that habanero heat just a tiny little bit. Add a cupful of apple cider vinegar, a cupful of water, and then we're going to season it with just a tiny little hint of sugar and a couple of teaspoons of salt. Remember, this is a preserved hot sauce, so it's going to be a little salty. Now we're going to let that cook over about a medium heat for about 10 minutes while we roast this garlic here. We've got a medium heated skillet or griddle, add unpeeled cloves of garlic. Turn them for about 10 minutes or so until they're completely soft, and they'll be a little bit blotchy brown. Then we'll put the whole thing into the blender. In go the simmered habaneros, carrot, onion, and vinegar. And now we've got the roasted garlic to go in. I've still got the last one to peel from its papery skin. We'll put that onto the blender, secure the top. Remember to always take out the center of the top when you're blending warm liquids, and then turn it on. Time to give our habanero hot sauce a little taste. Well, it's habanero hot sauce. This stuff makes a great gift for anyone that you know that loves spicy, full-flavored fare. You know, you could even make your own label if you want to. And like this stuff, well, it's great on practically anything, like those scrambled eggs or stirred into guacamole. You know, I love this stuff on anything that comes off the grill. Now, of course, that vinegary hot sauce isn't the only option that you have in the Yucatan. When you want to capture that real magic that is habanero, well, there's all kinds of salsas and condiments to choose from, depending on what you're cooking and what your mood is, what the weather is. Well, right now, I'm sort of in the mood for roasted habanero, because when you roast an habanero, well, it brings out all kinds of beautiful sweetness. So I've got some roasting right here on a cast iron skillet on the grill, and behind it, there's some roasted tomatoes. What we're gonna do is to make a classic sauce from the Yucatan called tomate frito. And it starts off with a little bit of sliced onion that's gonna go into a hot skillet. The skillet is coated with a little bit of olive oil. Sometimes they'll use fresh rendered pork lard there. Now, while that's cooking away, let's peel the roasty skin off of these tomatoes. Then we'll put them into the blender, puree them, and add them to the sauteed onions. Now, I don't want those roasted tomatoes to be too pureed, because I want some nice texture to this tomate frito sauce. I'll give that a nice sprinkling of salt. And now let's talk roasted habanero. You've got these three here. You could choose as little or as much of them as you want. Usually for about 1.5 pounds of tomatoes, I'll just use one. And here's a little trick that you'll learn from the people down in the Yucatan, is that you can take that roasted habanero, cut it in half, and just throw it right into the skillet. Let it simmer in there, and then when you're finished with the sauce, when it's cooked down, when it's darkened a little bit, you can pull those out. They'll have left a little of that habanero magic behind without a lot of the heat. Now on to fresh, raw habanero in a salsa that in Yucatan would be called schnipek. They say it means nose of the dog. If you get too much habanero in there, you could say it's nose of the dog that bit you. But let me show you how you can kind of tame that heat. So we've got a fresh habanero here, one of the fully ripened orange ones, and I'm going to cut it in half. And what you'll notice here is a seed pod and a vein that goes down from the seed pod. Well, I'm going to cut out that vein and the seed pod, and that is where all of the heat resides. So if we want to tame the heat of the habanero but still keep that beautiful habanero flavor, that sort of tropical fruit-like flavor, then we cut out all of those veins, and then I'm going to mince it. And I'm only going to use half an habanero for this batch of schnipek, what's really like a chopped tomato salsa that has radish in it as well. So chop that up very, very finely. And then I'm going to scoop all of that into a bowl. And I've got another little fresh salsa trick to show you. Scrape that in there. Okay, and it has to do with the onion. I've got a red onion here, and I'm going to chop that up into a fairly fine dice. And then I'm going to scrape that into a strainer. Go over to the sink and run cold water over it. Now what we're going to get by doing this is very, very fresh onion. Very lovely addition to our salsa without any of that sort of offending onion flavor, if you know what I mean. Now all that's left is to chop up the tomato, some cilantro, and little radishes. And then we'll season it with a little fresh squeezed lime juice, some salt. Stir it all together in our chopped tomato, radish, Yucatan-style salsa. Our schneepeck is ready to eat. So we've got our boiled vinegary hot sauce, our roasted tomato, tomate frito, and our fresh chopped salsa. Three completely different, completely Yucatecan ways to get to habanero hell. Now, don't get me wrong. The Yucatan is definitely habanero land, but it's not the only flavor. Certainly they sell a whole lot of them, but there's some other chilies in the house here. Just take a look at this one right here. See this little lobed beauty? They call it a chile dulce, sweet chili, and it's definitely a relative of our green bell pepper. It's going to have a flesh that's a little bit denser and a little more flavorful than what we have at home. But by contrast, this is anything but dulce, anything but sweet. These are very hot little chilies that they call chile mash. It's the fresh version of a Pekin chili. They oftentimes will put that into vinegar and pickle it to serve alongside tacos or whatever. Now, this one, well, it's a lot of fun. This is a chile loco. Crazy chili. Looks a lot like a Cubanelle, but it's anything but a Cubanelle. It's really, really hot. Important chili, however, is this one that is yellow. Looks a lot like a banana pepper in the United States. Sure, it'll have a little bit thicker flesh, a little bit more intense flavor like everything else does here because, you know, chilies take on the flavor of the climate and the soil where they're grown very much like grapes do. This chili, however, will still have that banana pepper, clean, clear flavor and bright, bright heat. Now, in our house, we're into pot roast. Not just the regular old meat and potatoes kind, but something that's a little jazzier, a little more lively, like this fabulous Yucatan-style pot-roasted pork with yellow chilies. Let me show you how you make it. We're going to start off with a white onion that I'm going to sort of thickly slice here. Now, these are white onions, not yellow onions. That'll give the most authentic flavor to this dish. I'm going to put it into a pot that's got a little oil in the bottom of it. And then slide in this pork roast. It's about 2 pounds. And we're going to let that brown while we work on those yellow chilies. You know, those yellow hot banana peppers. I'm going to roast them here over an open flame. I'll need about 6 of them for this dish. And when they're all blackened and blistered on the outside, I find it easiest to cut off the top, cut them open, scrape out the seeds, then flip over the chili and scrape off the blackened skin. Then we're going to cut them into strips. Now the pork and onions are browned, the chilies are sliced up, and I've got the pan where I did all that browning, and I'm going to give it a special treatment. I'm going to line it with some banana leaves. Now remember, you can get these at any Asian or most any Mexican market as well. And if you can't find them, just leave them out. But they're going to give a real special character to this particular pot roast. So I'm going to lay 2 chunks of it here over the pot and then just kind of nestle them down in there. Into the pot now will go the browned piece of pork roast. Sprinkle those beautifully browned onions over the top of all of that. And of course the yellow chilies, spicy as they are. Oh, that was already looking wonderful. Now, one of the things that's going to give this dish a special character is the combination of sweet and savory and spicy. This is a plantain. This is the cooking banana. And most of us would think that this is what it would look like in its ripe stage. But until it gets very dark like this, it's not particularly sweet. So you let them ripen. That can take as much as a week. And then cut off the ends of it. Make a little slit down the side of it. They have a fairly tough skin. Peel all of that off. And then cut it into cubes. Now the cubes will all go in on top of the chilies and the onions over the meat. And then we're going to give a nice sprinkling of salt over the top of the pot. And one last little touch. I'm going to take water. We need a little bit of liquid to get the cooking started here. I'll take about 3/4 of a cup of water, and I'm going to add to it a couple of spoonfuls of dark brown sugar. Now, in Mexico, this would be piloncillo, that unrefined sugar. Stir that up, and then right over the top of the pot it goes. I'm already getting excited about this one. Cover the meat and all those savory and sweet ingredients with the banana leaves. Open the oven door and put it in. You'll want to cook it for 1.5 to 2 hours at about 325 degrees. The last ladleful of the braising juices. For garnish, got some very thinly sliced red onion. To add brightness, lime wedges to squeeze over. Tender soul food with just that right spark of chili heat and flavor. Isn't this just the quintessential Yucatan moment? It's a warm afternoon, beautiful open-air restaurant. Now, the way that they handle the heat here in the Yucatan, whether it's in bottled hot sauce in that chopped fresh salsa or in a roasted and pounded salsa like that one, is to balance the heat with some salt and some lime, and then to just serve it right on the side. One of the most remarkable things about the food here in the Yucatan is that, well, it's really not all that hot. Did you hear what I said? I mean, when you come to the Yucatan, you might really be surprised about the fact that this is one of the mildest cuisines in the whole country. Well, because they've got that on the side. But what's up with that? Well, my theory is that the people in the Yucatan, they like that quick hit that you get from using the habanero as a condiment, not as an ingredient in a dish. They want it all right up front. They love that rush that just grabs you and wakes up all of your senses. And then as it fades, well, the flavors of the food come up and you can just enjoy them with heightened new awareness. Stuff's pretty hot, but very cool.